Welcome to the Iran This Week podcast for the week ending 22 July 2011. Let's start with a review of the week's news about Iran. On 19 July, The Guardian reported that Western capitals have reacted angrily to an announcement by Iran that it is installing more advanced centrifuges in a uranium enrichment plant with the aim of accelerating its nuclear program. The installation of new centrifuges with better quality and speed is ongoing, Raman Mehmanparast, the Iran Foreign Ministry spokesman, told reporters at his weekly press briefing. We have announced it, and the International Atomic Energy Agency has full supervision of them. They are fully aware that Iran's peaceful nuclear activity continues to progress. This is another confirmation of the Islamic Republic's successful strides in its nuclear activities. However, France said Iran's move, which Tehran claims could triple the rate at which it enriches uranium, confirmed suspicions that the Iranian nuclear program had no credible civilian application. The French Foreign Ministry said, Iran has just given in to another provocation by announcing the imminent installation of next-generation centrifuges. This is a new violation of 6 Security Council resolutions and 10 resolutions by the Council of Governors of the International Atomic Energy Agency. The British Foreign Office said the announcement further undermines Iran's claim that its nuclear program is designed for purely peaceful purposes and demonstrates the urgency of increasing pressure on Iran. Iran must understand that we will not be distracted by events in the region, and it should not doubt our resolve. On 19 July, AFP reported the Iranian Navy plans on deploying warships to the Atlantic Ocean as part of a program to ply international waters, Rear Admiral Habibullah Sayari said in a statement published Tuesday. But the commander of the Navy, quoted by the Kayan newspaper, said he was waiting for final approval before launching the operation. In case of final approval of the project, a fleet of the Navy will be sent to the Atlantic. Sayari was quoted as saying, without giving details about the fleet or where in the Atlantic it would be deployed. The presence of ships and subs in the Mediterranean Sea, the Suez Canal, and the Indian Ocean and international waters is still on the agenda of the Navy, Sayari said. According to Sayari, Navy ships assigned to long-distance missions will be equipped with newer cruise missiles. Ships going on missions are equipped with surface-to-surface Noor missiles, which have a range of 200 kilometers, he said. In February, Iran moved 2 warships into the Mediterranean Sea, crossing the Red Sea and the Suez Canal, triggering anger in Israel, which branded the move political provocation and put its navy on alert. The 2 ships docked in Syria on February 24th, marking Iran's first such mission since the 1979 Islamic Revolution. Analysts said the Islamic Republic was trying to project its clout in the region at a time when anti-government protests sweeping the Arab world from Casablanca to Cairo are shifting the regional balance of power. In recent years, Iranian warships have also patrolled Iranian ships and those of other nations as they made their way across the pirate-infested Gulf of Aden. Iranian submarines of the Kilo class escorted warships to the Red Sea to collect data in June, their first mission in distant waters. Iranian maritime forces are composed mainly of small units equipped with missiles and operating under the control of the Revolutionary Guard in the Gulf. The ocean-going fleet is also small and under the command of the Iranian Navy, which comprises a half-dozen small frigates and destroyers from 1,500 to 2,000 tons and 3 submarines of 3,000 tons of the Kilo class purchased from Russia in the 1990s. On 19 June, Reuters reported that Iran will sign a $4 billion contract with China for development of an underground transport system in Iran. State television quoted an official as saying on Tuesday, "The $4 billion financing contract will be signed with China tonight," said Mohammad Royanian, head of Iran's Transport and Fuel Management Office. He gave no other details. China, the second biggest importer of Iranian oil after Japan, has long been involved in infrastructure projects in Iran where economic sanctions have hampered investment by Western companies. Iran said in February that China had signed a $13 billion contract to build a railway network in the Islamic State. Trade between the two countries is worth around $30 billion per year. President Mahmoud Ahmadinejad said he hopes to increase the volume of trade to $100 billion. On 19 June, AFP reported Iran on Tuesday declared that the innocence would be proved of its nationals accused of the 1994 bombing that leveled a Jewish charity building in Argentina and killed 85 people. If in fair conditions and within legal procedures a serious effort is made to shed light on this action, the error in this case and the attempt by some to implicate some citizens of our country will become known and the innocence of our nationals will be proven, Iranian Foreign Ministry spokesman Ramin Mehmanparast told reporters. Mehmanparast's comments come a day after Argentinian Foreign Minister Hector Timerman said that Buenos Aires is studying an offer from Iran to cooperate with the investigation into the bombing. Monday marked the 17th anniversary of the attack that destroyed the 7-story AMIA building in Buenos Aires. Aside from the 85 deaths, 300 people were injured in the blast. Argentine officials alleged the attack, the worst terror strike ever on Argentine soil, was carried out by members of the Lebanese Shia group Hezbollah on Tehran's orders, but Mehmanparast denied Iran was involved. On 20 July, AFP reported that Iran's elite Revolutionary Guards continued their offensive against rebels from the Party of Free Life of Kurdistan, a group known by the acronym of PJAK, on Wednesday, killing and wounding a number of them, the media reported. The Guards on Wednesday killed and wounded a number of PJAK members in a new phase of operations, Guards commander in northwestern Iran, Brigadier General Mohammad Taqi Osanlu, was quoted on the state television website as saying. He added that the operation against PJAK was carried out in Al-Vatan, Dasht-e-Vazni, Jasusan, and the Gavizeh Heights, all of which are inside Iran, and did not mention any cross-border operations. Osanlu's comments come a day after authorities in Iraqi Kurdistan told Iran that it must respect the borders with Iraq. We demand Iran respect the sovereignty of the Kurdistan region as part of the sovereignty of Iraq, regional government spokesman Kawa Mahmoud told AFP. Osanlu said, "Our operation is within the framework of pursuing and eliminating anti-revolutionary forces, especially the PJAK terrorist group, and will continue with full power along the Islamic Republic's border with Iraqi Kurdistan." The rhetoric on all sides has heated up in recent days, barely a week after Iranian officials stated that they reserve the right to attack PJAK bases in Iraq's Kurdish region. In Tehran, the commander of Revolutionary Guards Ground Forces, Brigadier General Mohammad Pakpour, demanded on Tuesday that the Baghdad government and Kurdish authorities in Iraq prevent Kurdish rebels from attacking Iran from Iraqi territory. On Monday, a commander in the Guards said Iran had taken full control of 3 PJAK camps inside Iraq. The fighting, which began on Saturday, left at least 2 Revolutionary Guards, a colonel and a captain, killed and 3 wounded, according to security officials in Tehran. PJAK, meanwhile, said 2 of its fighters were killed and 4 wounded. Saeed Khan, from the PJAK's political office, said the rebel movement would not back down in the aftermath of the clashes, telling AFP in Iraq, "Iran must know it cannot defeat PJAK. This is the truth. Iranian forces regularly shell border districts of Iraq's Kurdish region, targeting PJAK bases." On 21 July, Reuters reported that Iran has upped the ante in an oil payments fight with India and halted crude supplies in August, company sources said on Thursday, forcing Indian refiners to seek shipments from alternative suppliers, including top exporter Saudi Arabia. Since December, India and Iran have struggled to find a way for New Delhi to pay for the 400,000 barrels per day, or 12% of its oil demand, after the Reserve Bank of India halted a clearing mechanism under U.S. pressure. That move won praise from Washington, which is using sanctions in a bid to get Tehran to halt its nuclear program. Indian firms Mangalore Refinery and Petrochemicals Limited, Iran's biggest Indian client, BPCL, IOC, HPCL, and SR buy crude from the Islamic Republic, and their collective debt to Iran since the crisis broke out has risen to more than $5 billion. None of the 5 refiners have received a crude supply plan from Iran for August cargoes, officials and executives at the company said on a condition of anonymity. Iran has told BPCL, HPCL, and SR that they will receive no supply in August, said a source at Saudi Aramco, which has been approached by these companies for extra volumes. IOC and MRPL have so far not asked for additional Saudi oil. MRPL is still hopeful it will get a late allocation from Iran, a company source said. On 21 July, AFP reported that Amnesty International said on Thursday that a graphic video of a public hanging in Iran of 3 men convicted for rape shows the brutalization of the condemned and those who watch executions. In the video, which the London-based human rights watchdog said it had received from a blogger, the men are seen standing atop 3 buses as guards hook ropes around their necks from a bridge overhead. Dozens of people can be seen watching from below in what was said to be Azadi Square in the western Iranian city of Kermanshah on Tuesday. After the crimes for which the 3 men were convicted and their executions are announced, the buses back up one by one and leave the trio suspended by their rope as numerous onlookers photograph or film the hangings, Amnesty said. These latest public executions underline the continuing horror of the death penalty in Iran, said Hasiba Hajj Sahrawi, Amnesty's deputy director for the Middle East and North Africa. Not only those executed, but all those who watch public executions, including children, are brutalized and degraded by the experience. These public displays of killing perpetuate a culture of acceptance of violence and bloodlust rather than a belief in justice, she said. We have also been informed that the arrest, trial, and execution of these men took place in barely 2 months, which raises serious questions about the fairness of the trial. Iran's ISNA news agency reported that 3 men convicted of rape were hanged Tuesday in Kermanshah, saying people who watched chanted slogans praising the judiciary for their action. Amnesty said it received the footage from Fazal Hawrami of the website KurdishBlogger.com. Iranian media reported 179 hangings last year, but international human rights groups say the actual number was much higher, ranking Iran second only to China in the number of people it executed. Tehran says the death penalty is essential to maintain law and order and applied only after exhaustive judicial proceedings. Murder, rape, armed robbery, and adultery are among the crimes punishable by death in Iran. On 22 July, the Associated Press reported that Iran's president wants to shed the nation's secrecy and forge ahead openly with developing nuclear weapons, but is opposed by the clerical leadership, which is worried about the international reaction to such a move, says an intelligence assessment shared with the Associated Press. That view from a nation with traditionally reliable intelligence from the region cannot be confirmed, in contrast with assessments by other countries that view Iranian President Mahmoud Ahmadinejad as relatively moderate on the nuclear issue compared to the country's supreme leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei. Attempts to interpret Iran's goals are important because as it expands uranium enrichment, it is moving closer to being able to make a nuclear weapon by the day, even as it asserts that it is not interested in such arms and its programs are geared only to making reactor fuel. A U.S. official cited one assessment he had seen suggesting Ahmadinejad may be more moderate, more open to talks with the international community on resolving nuclear concerns than Khamenei. He asked for anonymity because his information was privileged, but a blunt comment by Ahmadinejad last month raises questions, telling Iranian state TV that if we want to make a bomb, we are not afraid of anybody. That defiant statement fits the scenario laid down by the intelligence assessment shared with the AP, depicting Ahmadinejad as wanting to move publicly to develop a nuclear program. Ahmadinejad is pushing to shake free of the restraints Iran has imposed upon itself and openly push forward to create a nuclear bomb, says the assessment shared with the AP. But Khamenei, whose word is final on nuclear and other issues, wants to progress using secret channels due to concern about a severe response from the West, says the report. The varying views reflect the difficulties that intelligence agencies face when probing a secretive nation that plays its cards close to its chest. Lines of division are murky. Alliances shift and positions change, leaving governments and private analysts frustrated as they try to nail down Tehran's nuclear endgame. They converge, however, in noting that recent political divisions between Ahmadinejad and Khamenei have spilled over to encompass Iran's nuclear activities to a greater degree than before. And that concludes the news roundup for this week. Please send any feedback on the above stories to IranThisWeek@artkeller.com. And now it's time for questions and comments from the desk of Art Keller. In my post last week, I said I'd be following up on the bizarre case of Mohammed Mahdi this week, so here goes. Mahdi first came to my attention about a month ago when I was talking to Mehrdad Kansari from the Green Wave, a dissident group of former Iranian diplomats based in London. At the time I spoke to him, the Green Wave had just been targeted by a regime propaganda film called A Diamond for Deception, in which the regime claimed Mahdi was actually a double agent sent to infiltrate the Green Wave. Dr. Kansari stated during his talk with me that he still believed Mahdi was not a double agent, hinting that he had vetted Mahdi's claims to have been a former general in the Revolutionary Guard, and that any real double agent would have stuck around to learn what the Green Wave was up to rather than disappearing from sight a week after the Green Wave's press conference stating that Mahdi would henceforth be working with the Green Wave. As a former intelligence officer myself, I agreed with Kansari's logic that it wouldn't make sense to send out a double agent, then pull him out after a press conference before he had had a chance to learn the extent of the Green Wave's activity. But when I relayed this viewpoint to an Iranian academic in the US, he rebutted Kansari's logic, saying that while they may be in earnest in their opposition to the regime, the small size of the Green Wave means it is simply not large enough to pose any real threat to the regime. So even if Mahdi was purposely sent, the regime may have felt simply embarrassing the group was adequate and that no serious effort at penetrating the group was merited. For about the first week after I talked to Dr. Kansari, I entertained the notion that Mahdi might have been a real defector kidnapped by the regime, dragged back to Iran, and forced to repudiate his earlier statements of support for the Green Wave. But upon reflection, I have to say that there is as much circumstantial evidence against that notion as there is for it. Several scholars have since pointed out to me that London-based journalist and commentator Ali Reza Norizadeh, also a previous podcast guest, has been a major promoter of Mahdi when Mahdi first showed up in London, but that Norizadeh fell curiously silent on the topic of Mahdi after Mahdi dropped out of view, but before he popped back up in A Diamond for Deception. Certainly, that reaction represents an interesting change in Norizadeh's attitude towards Mahdi, a reaction that calls into question Norizadeh's earlier support, in fact. Further muddying the water, there are different accounts within the regime itself of what exactly Mahdi was. The Supreme Leader's outlet Kayhan claimed Mahdi was arrested for anti-regime activities and that Mahdi's statements in the film were part of Mahdi's confession. The film itself claims that Mahdi was deliberately sent as a double agent. To make things yet more confusing, a statement from an official with Iran's Ministry of Intelligence claims that Mahdi was actually an unwitting dupe of the CIA and that the intelligence ministry foiled a plan to take Mahdi to Israel by getting him back home to Iran. Currently, Mahdi's status and whereabouts are unknown. In the film, there were no clues as to Mahdi's location. He appears to be in a generic apartment. I had a chance to discuss Mahdi a bit with journalist and political cartoonist Nick Kosar, another past guest of the podcast. Nick runs the Khod Neves website. Nick estimated he spent a total of 30 hours speaking to Mahdi for various interviews. He noted that Mahdi claimed to have had access to thousands of Iranian government documents which Mahdi intended to reveal, even going so far once as asking Kosar for help in setting up a website to do just that. But Mahdi never showed Kosar a single document to substantiate those claims. In characterizing his conversations with Mahdi, Kosar put it bluntly: Mahdi never opened his mouth unless doing so could gain him something. Also, it should be pointed out that the Voice of America interviewed Mahdi before he disappeared and then reappeared in the film, but the Voice of America declined to run those interviews, saying they had real doubts about Mahdi's claims. While Mahdi does not appear to be any kind of major player, his place in Iran's recent propaganda efforts remains an intriguing mystery. My own guess, and I will admit it is nothing more than that at this stage, is that Mahdi was a slick scammer who attempted to peddle himself to the Green Wave as well as many journalists covering Iran. Even though he may have been trying to scam the regime's detractors, he may nevertheless have fallen afoul of the regime by being too chummy with the opposition, which in turn could have led to Mahdi's arrest and the filming of forced confessions. I arrived at this default conclusion only by deductive reasoning that if he had been a regime spy from the beginning, the story about Mahdi within Iran would have been more consistently positive. Whereas if he had been a legitimate former general with crucial documents about Iran, either Alireza Nourizadeh, Mehrdad Konsari, or one of the many journalists to which Mahdi spoke would have released some examples of real documents to prove that Mahdi had been on the up and up, thereby demolishing the regime's claims about Mahdi. All in all, the case of Mr. Mohammed Mahdi remains a head-scratcher. If any podcast listeners have further details or clues about Mahdi's status and they'd care to share them with me, please email them to IranThisWeek, that's all one word, at artkeller.com. And that concludes the podcast for the week ending July 22nd, 2011. The Iran This Week podcast is also available for free download on iTunes. Until next week, this is Art Keller saying goodbye and Khoda Hafez.